Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about daycare and choosing the right one for your little one. Now, I've made a video in the past about daycare and my personal experience as a foster parent and some of the issues I ran into with daycare, but today it's actually going to be talking about the process of picking the right daycare for you and your family. Now, this guide can be used for any parents, but it's definitely going to be geared towards foster parents, as I am a foster parent myself. And I know a lot of you who watch my channel are also foster parents or interested in becoming foster parents. Now, when you're choosing a daycare, as a foster parent or as any parent, one of the first things you want to consider is location. Now, what I try to do is I imagine where my work is, where my home is, and all the areas around it that I'm willing to drive to. Now, this is one area that I think you should be the least picky in. Absolutely, convenience should be a factor in choosing your daycare, but it should not be the only factor or the most important factor. Because at the end of the day, if you're a full-time working parent like I am, your child spends a lot of time at daycare, and that daycare is basically half raising your child. Now, that is scary to think about, but it's true. There's those people and the values they're instilling in your child are a huge part of their development. And you don't want to pick a less than great place just because it happens to be right next to your home or right next to your work. So convenience should definitely be a factor, but it should not be the only factor. So when looking at location, definitely think about if you want it to be closer to your work, closer to your home, maybe on the way. Consider if maybe you could take a different route to your work and maybe you'd have more options available if you're willing to drive a little further out. So definitely try to keep your circle of location as big as you can when you're trying to make this decision. Once you've kind of narrowed down how far you're willing to travel, which daycares are within that realm, including home daycares, daycare centers, all of that, that's the first step. So location, where you're willing to drive, all the list of all those places that are in that place. Now, don't be too picky yet here, okay? So go ahead and include everything that's in that location there, whether it's a home daycare, whether it's a daycare center, whether it looks great or looks horrible. Just keep it all on the list for now. Your next step is going to be basically availability. So two things. One, does that place have a spot for your child? Usually you can find this out pretty easily just by calling and asking like, hey, do y'all have space in your program for however old your child is? A newborn, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, whatever it happens to be. So that's number one. Number two is seeing if the price matches up with you. Now, this may be you're paying out of pocket for daycare and it needs to be under a certain price threshold, or it may be that you have a subsidy because you're a foster parent or you're low income and you need to make sure that this place accepts subsidies. Now, that can be one of the biggest limiting factors. The amount of daycares that accept childcare subsidies sometimes can be pretty limited. So you may see your list really start dropping off after you see about availability and see about pricing. Now, if availability is limited because they say they don't have space for your child, if it's a place you're really interested in, see if you can get on a wait list, see if they are going to have space opening up soon, okay? So don't just take that as a no, definitely ask questions. All right, so once you've discussed location, availability, and pricing, now you can start getting into the little nitty-gritty stuff, okay? This is when it's time to go and tour these places and see if they're going to mesh with your family. Now, I recommend having a list of questions and things you want to specifically see and look at when you're on these tours. Now, daycares, they have a lot of tours coming through. They may not always be as forthcoming or as long as you'd hope they would. So you really have to advocate for yourself and your child. So if you want them to show you something or you want them to answer questions that they didn't mention, you have to ask for that, okay? If you want to see every classroom from newborn to 5 years old because your child's going to go there for their entirety of their lives, do that. They may just show you the infant room because that's where you are in your stage of life right now. But you want to see where your kid's going to be, moving forward. So just know that you can ask questions, that you can look for more things than they're going to show you. Now, you might be wondering, what should I look for? What should I ask while I'm there? And that's basically what I want this video to really focus on. Like, what do you need to look for when you're going into these daycares, and what do you need to see? And this is going to vary a little bit by family. Firstly, you should definitely consider if your children have any kind of special needs. Do they have a special diet they need to follow? Are you breastfeeding? You need to make sure that you can be up there and breastfeed. Those are questions you want to ask on the tour. Don't wait until you've enrolled your child because the answer may be no. So if you're interested in going up and seeing your child during the day, if you want to have a pick up and drop off whenever you want type situation, if your child is vegetarian or is allergic to something, make sure that those centers are able to provide accommodations for you in the way that you want. Be specific. Tell them exactly how are you going to accommodate my child? Am I able to pack their lunch? Do you provide lunches for them? These are questions you need to ask. So some things I recommend asking about is the meal plan. Is it included in tuition? Are they providing meals for your child? If they are, what do those meals look like? I mean, are they feeding your kids, fruit snacks and hot dogs? Or are they, feeding more healthy, nutritious snacks? Do you care? Do they have any kind of guidelines that they follow? Are they nutrition friendly? Are they allergy friendly? Are you able to pack your lunch on Sundays if you want? These are all questions you might want to ask about the meal plan. For infants, you may want to ask about feeding schedules. Some daycares don't follow feeding schedules. They just feed the babies whenever. And you may or may not want that. So you need to ask, will you follow my feeding schedule? Will they be on your feeding schedule? Can I breastfeed? Can I bring formula? How does that work? These are questions you definitely want to ask for all ages of kids, is how they're going to be fed. I talked about in my daycare and foster care video that I made prior to about my own experience that I had some real issues with this and meal planning and feeding. So definitely is something you want to ask about and make sure that they're willing to work with you on it. That being said, the other things I think you should ask about is the daily schedule. What kinds of activities and things are they going to be doing? Will they have outside time? Are they going to be showing their kids, movies and screens? Are you okay with that if they are? Are they going to have art time? Are they going to have free play time? Are they going to be doing educational activities? For infants, are they going to just be sitting in a bouncer all day? Are they going to be engaged in some sort of, interaction and learning and cuddling and all those things that are important for their development? These are things that you may not think to ask about, but you really should. You should definitely not assume that a daycare center is just going to provide all of the correct developmental activities. Unfortunately, that is just not the case, especially with some of the lower income daycares. So you really want to make sure that if you have the availability to ask for those questions and you have multiple options, I would definitely make sure you're asking those things. In addition to the meal plan and the daily schedule, I would also ask about sleeping. What times are they going to be napping? Do I need to bring anything for that? Will you follow my baby's schedule if they're on a sleep schedule? What if my child needs to nap less? What if my child doesn't nap at all? These are all questions you need to ask. Also, behavior. Does your child exhibit any kind of aggressive behaviors, hitting, biting? If so, what's the daycare policy on that? Because if they have a zero tolerance policy and your child is a biter, they're going to be kicked out after the first week, after you've paid all those entrance fees. So these are things you definitely want to ask about, especially if you have children who are coming from trauma who may have some of those more triggering behaviors. You definitely want to make sure that their discipline policy lines up with yours. That being said, that's another big thing I think you should look at is their philosophy in parenting and discipline the same as yours? If you believe in, gentle, positive, respectful parenting, is that something they're upholding at this childcare center? Or do they enforce timeouts, or do they use yelling at children? Do they separate them from others? These are things, if you're okay with that, then that works for your family. If you're not, then maybe you need to find another center, So just definitely talk about specifics. What would you do if my child did this? Keep them on the spot. Let them tell you exactly what they would do. You could even ask some of the teachers around on your tour what they would do in those situations. That can give you a really good idea of what kind of environment your kid's going to be in. Or going to be growing up in if they're really young. So that's definitely something important I would ask about for sure. So let's see, daily schedule, meal plan, pricing, location. The other thing I think you should really look at is just your general feel. I feel like when you walk into a childcare center and you take the tour, you kind of get that feeling of like, yeah, this could work, or no, this could not work. Definitely follow like your mom gut, follow those feelings. Look around. I think one of the biggest things in a childcare center, and I'm saying this as someone who's both worked in childcare and have experienced having my child in childcare, I think the best sign you can see in a childcare center is how long the employees have been there. Turnover is a huge problem for childcare centers. A lot of childcare centers have a hard time keeping employees for various reasons, but I think the sign of a really good childcare facility is employees who have been there for a long, long time. If you have a teacher in the infant room that has been there for 10 plus years, that is a very good sign that A, that person likes their job and likes what they're doing, which translates to how they treat your child. And B, that place is employing people who are happy where they are. They're treating the employees well, they're treating the children well, and it just makes an overall better environment. So definitely look and see, a lot of times they have little bios written by the teacher's doors, but if they don't, just ask, how long has this teacher been here? Do you have a lot of turnover here? Just ask them straight out, because that is something really important, because if your kid's getting a new teacher every month, they're going to have a really hard time adjusting to daycare and getting that kind of sense of normal and consistency that they really need. So definitely look and see how long people have been there. That's one of the biggest signs I think you can look for. In addition to that, just how they're treating their children, when you're taking the tour, what are the interactions with the teachers, with the kids look like? Does it look kind? Does it look sweet? Does it look like it's a robot? Just, like I said, just those general feelings. Really, you know what's best for you and your family and your kid. And I think price and location is very important, but that's not the only thing that's important. I think knowing that they're going to accommodate you and your child and their special needs, and knowing that they match your philosophy and raising your child, because like I said, they basically half raising your child if they're there full time. And that is really coming to my last final thing I want to talk about with this, and that's just making sure that this facility has all of the, perks, I guess. It's going to work for your family. If you need to come and pick your child up, at 12 o'clock every day and then bring them back, do they allow that? I can't speak. Do they allow you to drop in and drop out with your child? Will they allow social workers to come in and pick up your child or take them? These are like the little things that you need to make sure match up for you and your family and this childcare center, because some of these things you may think, well, of course a childcare center will let me pick my kid up, but a lot of facilities actually don't let you do that. So you need to make sure that you read the fine print and know exactly what they expect, and make sure that it's right for your family. And make sure you get all the paperwork when you go as well, because those paperworks will tell you exactly what they provide for your child. Like I said, the fine print and details, what you need to bring for your child, the little hidden pricing, all of that. So definitely when you go to a daycare, in addition to looking for all the things I talked about, pick up as much paperwork as you can and as much information as you can. And if you feel like you need to go in for a second tour, go in for a second tour. Don't just settle for, like I said, the closest one or the cheapest one, or anything like that, or the one that looks the nicest on the outside, because that's not always the case. All right, guys, well, those are my tips for kind of choosing a daycare for your child. If you have any tips that I didn't mention in here, definitely leave them below so people can use this video as a resource when they're looking for a daycare for their little ones. If you have any questions for me specifically about daycare, definitely leave them in the comments below. Like I said, I did make another video about my personal experience with daycare and foster care. If you're interested in that, definitely go and check that out. I'll leave a link below as well. All right, guys, that's it for today. I'll talk to y'all next time. Bye.